I'll call the meeting to order.
The meeting has been posted according to open meeting laws.
Roll call.
President Johnson.
Here.
Trustee Renucci. Here. Commissioner Hayes. Here. Commissioner Lederhouse.
Here.
Commissioner Morath. Here. Commissioner Seeger.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. We'll do citizen participation per Village Resolution 2017-01. Anyone wishing to address the Plan Commission during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject must specifically relate to matters under the jurisdiction of the Plan Commission, whether on the agenda or not. The Plan Commission should not engage in a discussion regarding comments because it was not part of the publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of the citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they are participating in a public hearing or specifically allowed by a majority vote in the Plan Commission due to involvement in an agenda item. Tom, or are you here for the... Or are you here for the, you're the only guy in the audience. Oh, we have are you here for the public hearing? Or are you here for citizen, public hearing? Okay, well, do you want to do? Okay, go ahead, yeah, go ahead and for the record, state your name and address, please.
Okay, Tom Senf, 2141 Church Street, East Troy. Just kind of following up on a few things regarding the Starbucks property and Oak Ridge Cemetery. Couple of things the last meeting, Scott, you were going to get in touch with Ray Gooden and come to me with some suggestions that he might have, wondering if you're able to share anything now on that.
I can definitely share something after the meeting. If that's
Okay,
okay.
I'm
You and I
going to
can
be
maybe
out of
talk?
here. I'm going to have to be out of here quick, so.
I'll give you my number and you can give me a call. We'll
Okay.
talk about it.
Yeah, both of us can give you some updates. It's just there's been some people out on vacations, so.
Okay. One other thing that I want to get addressed, there was some talk towards the end of that meeting regarding possible zoning as far as wall or fencing along a drive-through that abuts another property. I know there was some discussion about that. You had made that comment, wondering where we are on that. And the other question that we have is what are the next businesses going to be, and has anything been resolved as far as buffering along those properties?
So I can't answer your second question, and your third question will be addressed in this agenda.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
You know my concerns, so
Yep. Thanks, Tom.
I'm not going away. Like a bad penny, I'll be here.
Understood. Come on up. Harvey, can you hit the button there? There you go. Thank you.
I'm Harvey Altenberg. I'm a Town of East Troy resident, but I'm president of the cemetery, and I'm just concerned that we seem to get no communication as to what's going on over there. We've been to a couple meetings. We think we're going to hear something, and all that happens is the hole gets bigger over there and come and right up to our property once again. And I'd sure like to be more informed to what's going on there.
I can't engage in a conversation with you, but as we said, we can talk to you guys.
Of polystructures and have been on several Plan Commission agendas. We have advanced it to the point of now we're identifying it here as carport canopies, and specifically what we're mentioning here in the public hearing notice is that we're amending the accessory building requirements to acknowledge these structures and how they fit within the village's framework. So there's a definition that we're adding to the zoning code for a carport canopy. And then the accessory buildings section, somebody wants to propose one as an accessory building, they can now do so.
Questions from the commission for Orrin during the public hearing? Either of you guys have comments on this? No? All right. Seeing that no one wants to offer any other comments on the public hearing, if we're ready to make them, oh, we have one other individual. We're in a public hearing on ordinance 2024-12 regarding accessory building requirements. So any other public comment on that? Going once? Going twice? Okay, I will close the public hearing. I would need a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval to the village board following a properly noticed public hearing. Did that.
Second.
Okay, any question? Roger. Any questions or discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to ordinance 2024-13 regarding temporary use requirements for temporary construction storage. So I'll open the public hearing and ask Orrin, you do the same thing, catch us up on what's happening.
So for this item, we are tweaking some of the language in the existing code. We're now acknowledging portable on-demand storage units as the name for this particular item under temporary uses. We've added some regulations to this to make it a little clearer and beef it up a little bit. And the overall point of this is just folks can temporarily have something delivered to their property that's there to provide a service for a certain period of time, at the end of which, you know, it goes away. So if somebody's moving to or from a property, they could have one of these pods, if you will, or portable on-demand storage units brought to their property. This was already in the code. It was just under a different name, and we're just clarifying it and separating it from cargo containers, if you will, and making sure that there's a clear delineation between which is which in the code now.
Are we just portable on-demand storage units, which is 2024-14, or are we doing 24-13 for the construction storage?
Oh, sorry, so I guess I'll talk about them both since they kind of blur. So for the construction storage, again, it's also under the temporary use section of the code, 510-48E. We're adding the term cargo container to this. Again, this was in temporary construction storage, an existing term in the code. Adding cargo container to that, just so that folks know that that is an option. It likely was before, it just wasn't specifically mentioned. And we've added a definition for cargo container to the code as well, again, to specify what that is, what it means, and to be able to differentiate between what it is not in the code. So you can temporarily have something to house your equipment or tools or whatnot during a construction project as part of a temporary use. Now it just specifies that that vessel could be a cargo container. Still under the rest of the standards, we didn't touch any of those. We just specifically mentioned that it could include a cargo container.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, 2024-13 involves the on-demand storage units, and 14 involves the cargo containers, correct?
No, other way around.
Well, that's-
13 is temporary construction storage. That's the
Not what
item.
mine say. I'm sorry, I apologize, but that's not what mine say.
Yeah, it looks like the numbers on the ordinances do not match. They're reversed.
To be fair, they're draft ordinances, and we weren't sure which number was going to be used anyways, so
Right.
as long as we're all sure that we're talking about, I mean, these two are,
So what,
Kinda
so
tied
what,
together.
I guess for the record, what is in the packet as -14 is the temporary construction storage?
correct.
Okay, so that's the public hearing we're under, is temporary storage. So we have the draft here, other than the correction on the numbering. Other questions from the commission? Okay,
I make a motion.
hang on, we're still in a
Sorry.
public hearing.
Okay.
Hang on, I know. Anybody, any comments from the public on this item? Any comments from the public? Last time. Okay, I will close the public hearing.
Make a motion to recommend approval to the village board following properly noticed public hearing with the change to the numbers in accordance to what was posted.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Item 1C, which I will correct as ordinance 2024-13 in the packet regarding temporary use requirements for portable on-demand storage units. So I'll open the public hearing. And Orrin has, in the previous public hearing, given us the same overview. So any questions from the commission on this? Any questions from the public on this? Any questions from the public or comments? Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing.
Make a motion to recommend to the village board following a properly noticed public hearing with the changes to the numbers reflective of the publicly noticed agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 2, an ordinance to amend the village's zoning regulations, Chapter 510, regarding non-conforming structure requirements. I'll open the public hearing, and Orrin, if you could give us the overview, please.
So this was brought to our attention because there are older areas of the community where there are existing detached accessory structures that don't meet the current, some of the current single-family offset requirements. Obviously, these were part of the originally platted areas of the village. These buildings have been here a long time. The way that the non-conforming code currently reads, you can either, as the state statute allows, tear something down and replace it in kind in place. Otherwise, you need to build something that meets the code. And what we're being asked by citizens is to be able to expand a structure in an area that doesn't increase the nonconformity. So kind of common sense. That's what it was pointed out to us for the building inspector that the code used to say that before its most current iteration. And so we're kind of going back to what was in there with a little bit of an amendment to just acknowledge this particular situation where somebody would want to have a detached accessory structure that would be able to be replaced or expanded, but does not encroach further into required setbacks or offsets.
Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, I have a question. So when it says non-conforming garage, would that be just a garage, or could that be a shed or another type of outside building?
I guess the way that we approached this, we were specifically talking about garages. And so that's the terminology that was used.
We have
Could
a
it apply
different
to-
section that talks about sheds, I think. Am I right on that?
I think it does.
It's a separate, completely separate, considered a completely separate building, has different size requirements that are completely separate from what a garage would. What I'm remembering.
So would this ordinance help with that too, if you have a shed that's non-conforming or not? Just a garage?
I thought that would be the whole idea, though, was to make life in the village easier for people that had, if they bought or lived in an existing home that was there from the turn of the century that has a shed on that property, but maybe if it's non-conforming on one side, if they had to repair it, fix it, or whatever, that they'd be able to do so without being penalized, not that they could make it larger or impinge on farther into the illegality of it, But if they, like you were saying, if they wanted to make it bigger, they could go to the legal direction, is what I thought it was.
Yep, I think we're having the same conversation, it's just we were specifically talking about garages, not sheds. And I think it's a little easier with sheds for somebody to correct a situation because they're not as large with these garages, and some of them are carriage houses, they're that old.
Yeah.
It's a little different because it's a more substantial structure.
I understand, some are, some aren't. I mean, my shed has a concrete curb in it, and it sits about a half a foot onto Mr. Lauber's property. But I have a signed agreement from him saying it's okay. But my point is, though, is that if something were to happen, I didn't want to have somebody come down on me to say, well, you're illegal and you can't do anything with that anymore. Do you
So-
see where I'm going?
Yeah, so, Orin, in section 1, the language says non-conforming structure. In section 2, it says non-conforming garage. So I don't think that what we have is consistently written here, and I think from what the discussion is it simply a striking of the word garage within section 2 and replacing that with structure. Okay. So I think if we're making
I would
a
not be
mo-
opposed to that.
Yeah, so I think if we're making a motion to recommend, it would be with that one change. Is that, are we in agreement with that? You okay over there? All right, I was going to say, you're really upset about that. Okay, good discussion. Any questions or other items from the commission before I open it up to the public? Okay, any questions or comments from the public on this item? Questions or comments? Last chance. Okay, I will close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to recommend of approval to the village board following properly noticed public hearing with the verbiage in this ordinance identifying structure instead of garage.
A second.
Okay, Roger, second that. Questions or discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3, discussion related to amending the village's zoning regulations, Chapter 510, regarding the final approval of planned development districts. Eileen's got her memo here.
So there was what we think was an error in the code or some conflicting language. We had a practice of doing the planned development district approvals where there's 3 steps to those approvals. There's the preliminary, the general, and the final. At the general step, there's a recommendation to the village board with a public hearing. And then the final step, the practice has been that the Plan Commission has final approval authority because the code does state that it follows site plan approval process, which that is site plan approval process. However, later on in the code, there was a reference to that. There's always a sunset date on those Plan Commission approvals if development doesn't occur, and that referenced final village board approval. So I brought this to the board for their feedback, and they said they wanted that to remain as the practice. So this is really a housekeeping type item. If the Plan Commission's not opposed, we're proposing amending that ordinance so it would just clarify that the Plan Commission remains with that final approval authority as we've been proceeding previously.
I would think that we, as a plan commission, that's what we would want. Okay, so I would say for staff to draft the public hearing notice so we can make these ordinance changes. Okay? All right, simple enough. All right, we're going to move on to miscellaneous business preliminary consultation with Village of East Troy petitioner regarding conceptual plans for properties located approximately Trent Street and Hillcrest Avenue, RXUP 00160 and RXUP 00166, 167, 169, ROP 170, RMS 5, RMS 12. I'm not going to read all that. Crucible Materials Corporation Environmental Response Trust, care of Bruce Keys, Foley and Lardner LLP owner. So we have the memo here from Orrin. So Orrin, do you want to kind of give us an overview of what's here?
Absolutely. So you've got, as an attachment to my staff review, a memo from Eileen going over the background of this item, which has been before the village in the past. So the village has been working with trustee Bruce Keys from Foley and Lardner. The responsible party for this environmental cleanup, if you will, is Enpro. The DNR is responsible for overseeing the cleanup of this property. So back in 2018, there was a technical assistance to brownfields visioning workshop that took place here at the municipal building. Input was received, and at that time, some of the input was leaning towards developing a park recreation facility or public building on these properties. The cost of that from the Sigma Group was about $4.7 million to develop that concept. So the village board had given direction to the Parks and Rec to focus on existing facility improvements and maintenance rather than developing new parks due to budgetary concerns. So in 2024, the village did receive some Transportation Alternatives Program grants to begin planning for a trail. This concept that we're going to talk about tonight does still include that as a outdoor recreation component, a trail network that would be part of that. On March 11th, 2024, at a joint Plan Commission and Village Board meeting, there was information from the Walworth County Economic Development Alliance regarding housing. The Seamert property was identified during that presentation as a possibility for housing, as it is currently zoned for residential development. And this specifically, it was talking about small to mid-side housing that is affordable for a variety of middle-income households. So the remediation of this property may require a tax incremental financing, an environmental TID, if you will, or tax incremental district to help get this cleaned up and some kind of project moved along. In your concept, if you look at the second page of the drawings from Vanderwall and Associates, there's a page labeled Environmental Constraints to Development that kind of shows by, bubble diagram section of this area what it would take to remediate. So there's a significant remediation portion in the middle that's kind of an orange triangular shape. You have minimal to no remediation anticipated to the northern areas. On the west end, you've got some moderate remediation anticipated, and then you've got an area of significant remediation on the east end. So there's a lot of encumbrances with this site. It's an environmentally sensitive site, not just the remediation aspect of it, but the natural resources that are present. You've got Honey Creek flowing through, there's floodplain, wetland, environmental corridor associated with that, and wetlands as well. There's steep slopes going down from the site down to the creek. So the first page of the site kind of gives you a good idea of where all of that stuff is, the site inventory from Vanderwall and Associates. So the idea here is just concept plans for how this property could be redeveloped or, reused in the future to meet the ends of that Walworth County Economic Development Alliance goal, if you will. And the concepts that you have in front of you from Vanderwall are split between option A and option B. Option A includes lower density and market rates. Option B is a little higher density and a senior focus. So let's start with option A. This concept includes 16 duplex units on 8 lots, 32 townhome rear loaded units, 24 townhome tuck units, some shared open space, 2 stormwater basins, and then that trail network. The way that both of these concepts are structured, the higher density uses are closer to the creek and further away from the existing single-family residential with some type of transition in between them and the single-family residential. So that you're not just putting a bunch of density right up against single-family homes. So that's been thought about, that's a best practice. So on option A, you have duplexes in between the rest of the proposed multifamily, if you will, and the single-family homes. The townhomes, the rear that you see, that designation is just where the parking would take place, the garages, if you will. So as far as the existing conditions of this, there's multiple different zonings across this area, and obviously multiple different parcels and a couple different land uses. So whatever happens moving forward, there may need to be a rezoning and/or comp plan amendment to get some kind of, uniformity and to meet state statute requirements for consistency. What ends up being the district chosen for a land use or a zoning depends on what kind of density would end up there and what types of uses. And so what I speak to, in the staff review is just that you've got options, if you will. And I've kind of spelled out what the zoning could be based on the type of use that ends up, potentially going in this space. Again, because this is a concept plan, there's no action needed from the Plan Commission. We are looking for feedback and direction. And so, moving on to option B, which is the slightly more dense option and senior focused. There are townhomes and 4-unit development adjacent to the single-family residential as the transition. And then there is some multiplex, walk-up apartment buildings, and then multifamily condos and multifamily senior housing. And the way that this, the way that a type of project like this could work is that there are different developers for different components. That's a possibility, or perhaps there's one developer for the whole thing. It could happen either way. The way that this is laid out, again, is to try to have a transition between the single family and the more intense stuff near the creek. This particular, density probably lends itself to the M10 multifamily district as far as zoning and/or a planned development district, depending on, how you want to do it. How this gets developed could also dictate what makes sense as far as a zoning, again, depending on how you parcel this off, because the density is going to be based on how many units per acre. Depending on if you have multiple lots or just one lot, that's going to dictate what the density is for that particular lot. So you may have something with a multifamily, zoning, if you're going to do it on a lot-by-lot basis, or you could do a PDD for the whole thing. Again, it just depends on, are you going to have multiple developers or are you going to have one developer? We don't have that information yet, but part of the issue here is that the village is really the interested party in spurring something to happen here. And the It's already sat for a while, and so that's what the spirit of having these concepts drawn up for is to help move the ball forward for this project. So between the two options, we'll just end with the last page, which are just examples, visuals of what these particular uses mentioned in each of the options could look like. And so, there's an example of a 4-unit building, of a multiplex, of a duplex, of townhomes, front and rear loaded, townhomes again, and then apartment/condo, what some of those could look like, which you've all seen in this community or other communities. It's just nice while you're looking at this to have a visual reference. So again, there's no action required, no motion needed, but feedback for staff on what you think of these options. And again, as this project moves forward, if something is going to happen at the village level, another step is probably in the discussion is going to be TIF. So you would have to reach out to your TID consultant and come up with a project plan and all of that good stuff. So that's just another part of this moving forward.
Just to add that another reason why we're having this conversation is to provide, I guess, some impetus on the remediation, that what we're looking for is not a remediation to industrial levels, which is what the site was, but in remediation to what we intend the site to be in the future. And not closing that from a trustee standpoint until that's achieved. So that's why if, we can debate, option A, option B, the mix and the type, but if it's a type of residential, that's what we need to push for. But you'll see in those drawings and then also in those examples there's not going to be any basements, there's not going to be any below-ground parking. It's all going to be all above ground for that, so we have to consider that. I think something else we need to consider is back to what we talked about in March at that joint meeting with the board that Eileen presented. Obviously, housing and availability is a need. We've heard a lot from the residents about the need for senior housing, so it may not be option A or option B. It's not an and or, this or that. It could be some hybrid of that. But also, we have a challenge around workforce housing, both from a rental standpoint, but an ownership standpoint as well. The only new houses being built in the village right now are 550 and up. So providing people with a pathway to building home ownership and equity, financial equity in that is something that I think we need to think about. Those are my only comments. So other thoughts or comments from the commission?
I think that when looking at a development like this, the denser population is going to be much more attractive to a developer that does come into the area. And this one happens to capture a couple of things. It captures that higher volume of people or denser population, and it also captures the idea of a need that we have in the community of senior living. So in looking at the two concepts, I would sway toward option B because of being able to attract somebody in to do the development and making it financially worth doing, and because of the senior living possibility of it.
I guess my opinion about A and B is, I know it's not probably physically, financially sound, but I like the lower density. I like the more feel of the small town type that we have. But I do understand the senior part of it. So I think if there was a way to kind of mix A and B together to get C, the lower density plus the senior housing that's needed, I think that would be good in my opinion.
What does the remediation process look like?
That's a loaded question. Eileen or Orin, do you want to?
I can say we're hearing things like 18 months to 2 years right now, but until we really have that direction of the level of remediation, I don't have complete confidence in any timeline that I'm hearing. So to answer your question, we don't have a great answer, but this would help. Having that direction, I think, will also help expedite the remediation process. It's my understanding that basically the remediation that's been done has been done in a very slow manner. And this would help expedite it because they know there's a use. But I can't give you, I can tell you what I've been hearing, but I'm not positive that that's going to be the final amount of time.
Yeah, Eileen and Jason, Equitz and I, we walked the property back in June. I think we picked the hottest, most humid day to do it. And yeah, they've made progress, but there's still a lot that they haven't done yet. And I think, again, it's back to this, the trustee is interested in getting the remediation complete and the property sold. So what?
They want to get out.
Right, exactly. They have that's their job because they want to be done with it. But if we're saying, well, we're not ever going to rezone this back to industrial, or it doesn't fit with the comp plan, and the remediation firm is saying we're only going to remediate to industrial, there's a gap there. So then trustee is caught, and they wouldn't be able to market it then because we're going, wait, it's just going to sit vague. So that gives the trustee the push with the DNR to be able to say, no, you must remediate to this level. And so I guess my question, and to ensure consensus, we can debate the density and we have plenty of time to do that, is going some variation of this. Is that what the commission is interested in? And if the answer is yes, then we need to be making sure that we evaluate any, things that we need to update in the comp plan to formalize that, to give that ammunition to the trustee. But if we disagree, then we need to have that conversation.
I agree that this is the way to go instead of the industrial side of it.
And it's definitely the way to go without having to burden the people of this community with another $4.7 million for a park. We have parks that we're investing in now. So let's just continue that process and look at bringing a tax base back in here to help support the village.
I would just add that this is identified as an infill site within the comprehensive plan, and so the types of development that we're talking about would fit within that area.
So would we need to make any other amendments to the comprehensive plan based on what we know now?
Again, it depends on what specific type of development we're looking at doing here. So as it sits, the land uses vary from mixed residential, single-family residential, sewered, general commercial, planned business/office, and ecological areas. If you're, those range for different parcels currently. So if you're going to do part of it, one of the large parcels is already mixed residential, and maybe you could move forward with something on that part without having to touch the rest. If you look at the parcels to the north that don't need much remediation, maybe that would need a different land use moving forward if you were going to do duplexes as an example. So it varies, and again, there could be a planned development for this whole thing. That's an option. So there could be a land use that encompasses all of the parcels if it's all going to be developed as one project. So it depends on how you want to move forward. But the fact that It's identified in general as an infill site, means that there could be multifamily as part of that, because there was exceptions within the comp plan carved out for this type of parcel in the village.
Like a planned unit development.
Like a planned unit development, or just straight multifamily in a zoning district that allows that. Could be either option.
Other questions or comments? So we're in agreement? Proceed forward with this? Staff, do you have what you need? Okay. Thank you. All right, recommendations for future agendas. Food trucks, comprehensive plan as it relates to affordable housing, what we just talked about. Tiny homes as accessory uses in residential zoning districts, revised application requirements for rezoning petitions, potential regulations / information related to front yard setbacks on side-loaded homes. First question, is this the right order of priority, or should we take one of the, we'll tackle food trucks and the comprehensive plan and maybe the mystery item as our next items? Okay. All right, next meeting's October 14th, 2024, 6:30. If needed, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you. You guys stick around. We can chat.